Great.
You are so, you put yourself so far in the background.
She tries.
I'm gonna pull you to the forefront, this one young lady.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I hear you.
You're like, yeah, you sound like you're right.
At least he's only.
That's too close.
Are we streaming that?
Yes.
Okay.
We are.
Okay. Let me what I'm gonna look at is something that has been on my mind. One of the things that's been on my mind is that the Creator is showing us how things are both being revealed and ended at the same time. But on my way down, something else came to me, and that is the awakening of the African female and the Caucasian female being strengthened by that. Okay?
Yes.
This is what I see, at least I think I do anyway. I see that well, we talked about how good morning. Good morning. We talked about how Donald Trump has been the source of revelation of the essence of this country and those things that are not for the benefit of mankind, in particular adverse to the continued existence of people of color. However, I don't think that that's the only thing that's taking place. I believe also that while these things are indeed being revealed, that they are coming to an end as well from the same source. It's like it's self-destruction. And what I see in that is, in order to keep us, as a people in a submissive position or in a place of bondage, the effort was to divide and conquer. And the division did not come only by virtue of convincing people in the islands that they were separate from us and convincing us that we were separate from those on the continent of Africa, etc. But it also came from divisions from within the enslaved people or the people who were enslaved by virtue of color. Brown bag society. If you darkened in the brown bag, you could not be a member of the society. That was something that was very prevalent in Charleston. The idea of the educated separated from the uneducated. Those who are financially comfortable separated from those who are not. Those internal divisions and selling the idea that we as a people are like crabs in a barrel, always pulling each other down. And we bought into a lie, because if we were like that, then how did we get Black Wall Street? How did we become the most educated people in the history of this country? How did we advance further than anyone in a short period of time as we did following slavery? Because no people has advanced as far as we did after being in bondage for so long. So the perceptions that were sold to us and that we bought are the things that kept us in bondage. Now, the scripture says that what was meant for your bad, I meant for your good. The same weapons that were used against us as a people, when I say us as a people, I'm talking about not only Africans worldwide, I'm talking about people of color, period, but Africans in particular, okay? We see those same things happening to Caucasians. What made this click with me, and good
morning.
at a deeper place was when the announcement was made for the tariffs, 25% on steel, 10% on aluminum. And the response to that was astronomical. And what I was shown in reference to that, or what I saw, is that the Caucasians in America are divided within themselves upon ideological lines and economic lines. You have the Republicans divided from the Democrats, but yet their goals are the same. You have the white supremacists separated within the Republican and within the Democratic Party. You have the Europeans who are separating themselves from the American, this country. You have the rift between Donald Trump and Angela Merkel. You have, even though both of them are German descent, you have the British who are separated from the European Union with Theresa May. You have the Greeks who were treated as a lower class of people when the economic crisis hit, the way they treated their economy. So within the whole European society, you have a division. And the same division that you have within that society is the division that was the concept that was used against us as a people to minimize our self-esteem. So I think that this division is beginning to take place, which says to me that this house of cards is about to fall. And the thing that has brought it to the brink of disaster is the exposing of the evilness and the violence within the essence of this society. And I see it happening at a rapid pace. However, I think the thing that will hasten its demise and bring to a place of balance more quickly, the balance that humanity needs, or the humanity is seeking. I think the thing that will do that is the awakening of the African woman and the strengthening of the Caucasian woman. When the African woman is awakened, everything changes throughout society. When the African woman is awakened, there is a cleansing that takes place within the heart of the African male. What I mean by that is this: if all life emanated from Africa, from the womb of Africa, then we have to look at the womb from which it emanated and see what that womb is doing, or see what the manifestation of that womb is doing and how it is functioning in present-day society, in order for us to understand what is actually taking place and what the needs are for us to come to a place of balance, which means that return to beginning, which is the source of all life. How is it that the African woman, or the African energy of the female, how is it to be awakened? When the African woman, when she was recognized as being a source of strength, that strength had to be dealt with. And the expression of that strength had to be minimized in order for a people to be colonized. That strength was minimized by using it against her. In order to use it against her, the males had to be indoctrinated and made to believe that this strong woman, or this woman is trying to take your place as a male. And as a result of that, females have become, African females has succumbed to a false sense of submissiveness. And in doing so, have submitted themselves to verbal, emotional, and physical abuse in order to subconsciously prove that they are not trying to take the place of a male, while at the same time they are denying the place or the purpose that the Creator gave them from the beginning. On the other hand, the African male has been forced to believe that you have to dominate your household. In other words, you have to be the man in your house, and there are some things that you don't allow her to do. And there are two words that I detest, especially when they're used to reference females, and that is, I allow her or I let her. Allow and let are two words that I detest, because if I allow you to do something, that means I'm controlling your life. I let you do it, so you couldn't do it unless I gave you permission to do it. And subconsciously, this is how the female and males of Africa has been indoctrinated. When this energy is awakened and it begins to see that the rightful place or the rightful purpose is not for dominance, but it is for the strength of its wisdom, the strength of its nurturing, the power of its insight, the insight that's necessary to sustain a group of people who otherwise would be destroyed. The male understanding that the purpose and function of it is to act on this insight. And what I mean by that is, if this feminine energy sees that we are to coordinate our efforts to get X number of our children in our communities, for lack of a better example, educated, then it's up to males to coalesce behind that and make sure that it happens. It has been done in the church in a covert way for many, many years. Females in the church they openly are submissive, but they quietly make things happen. And we know this because we say if it were not for the female in the church, nobody would be there. Because that's where the dominant, majority of the church population is female. We have to, as males, the male has to understand that wisdom is not making any attempt to dominate it, but is making every attempt to be one with it. And the oneness that it offers is, I have the insight, you make it happen. I am the wisdom, you are the understanding. You bring forth the knowledge, the experiences. Am I making sense? So the awakening. So when I talk about the awakening of the African female, or the African energy of the female, and I'm talking about a renewing of the womb, because up until this point, we have had more times when the womb of Africa was barren than we have with it being able to bear fruit. Okay, let me finish. at this juncture, we are faced with a womb that has been rejuvenated, a womb that whose menstrual cycle has ended, and it is fertile, and it is in a position to receive and to nurture a seed of life, a newness of life that this earth has not experienced in many, many generations.
Is the Caucasian female included?
Not there yet. I'm coming to her. She's not included in this part.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Did you have your hand up?
Yes.
Yeah, I just need to, I think, reiterate something in my mind. When you talked about wisdom and understanding, that being male and female energy flowing, whatever the situation is, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
Think about it this way. Who was the most prominent deliverer from physical slavery? Harriet Tubman. Who was the most prominent spokesperson against slavery? And who was it? Previously enslaved, Frederick Douglass. So the deliverance came at the hands of a female. And the agitation or the expression of the insight that the female saw in the deliverance came from the lips of a male. And that same male was a participant in the Underground Railroad, but a participant in a different way than was the female. I think it's also it's worthy to note that from what I heard, the state of Florida is getting ready to move from its statutory hall in the state capitol, a statue of a Confederate whatever, and replace it with Mary McLeod Bethune.
Wow.
Which is an African female who was born in South Carolina.
Right up the street.
Yeah. So you see where So you see where I'm coming from.
Mm-hmm.
So when I talk about the African female being awakened, I am actually making a greater reference to the African female expressing the purpose that she's always known she has. And when that doesn't happen, when the African female puts forth this false sense of submissiveness, it results in social, economic, physical, and emotional abuse. And this abuse is sustained by her willingness to be in that submissive position, because she has been indoctrinated or has been taught or convinced to believe that she's the problem. No matter what it is, she is the problem. And that has come from the oppressor, but perpetuated by the African male. And the African male who perpetuates that finds himself in a conflicting place. And the confliction is that he doesn't want anyone to treat his daughter like that, but he would treat his daughter's mother like that. That's a conflict.
Yeah.
That's confusion. If this abusiveness was the essence of his nature, then it would be directed toward all females. But there is a conflict there. I'm not excusing the abuse at all, but I am looking more at what I contend is the source of it. And when the African female, this African energy of feminism is awakened, something begins to change in the whole of society, as opposed to this false awakening of the Caucasian female. When the Caucasian female thought that she was awakened, she marched to vote and got no rights at all. She sought to find her strength in the place where she saw strength. And the place where she saw strength was in a male-dominated society. She saw strength as being something that is manifested by males and must be duplicated by females. In other words, she tried to be more man than the man. She tried to be more expressive of the warmonger than the male is, which is seen as strength to her, but as an issue to the male. Example, Hillary Clinton convinced Obama to kill Gaddafi. She was more of a warmonger than any man that she ran against. So she was more male manifestation than the males that she ran against. And that's where the Caucasian female has sought to find herself, because she has not learned how to look in a mirror and see who she is. She has only been able to look in the face of her counterpart and think that's who she is, i.e. the male. So when the African female awakens, then the energy that comes from this awakening energizes everything that's female. And it gives everything that's female not just an opportunity, but it gives them the desire, for lack of a better term. Desire is not a strong enough word, but for now I guess I have to use that. It gives them the desire to seek self-awareness. And this desire to seek self-awareness is reflected in some of the events that are being led by Caucasian females now. The introduction of the Me Too campaign or Me Too movement was initiated by an African female, and the energy of it was picked up by the Caucasian female. And the Caucasian female all of a sudden began to look in the mirror and see that I'm not a toy, and you're not the boy who tells me when to play. Got it? Because she has been a boy toy. She has been something to play with. She has been the one who has been treated as a child throughout her life and told to stay in your place. And in her place she stayed. And the place where she stayed is the place that the males say you are supposed to be in. So, but now with the Me Too movement, it seems innocuous on the surface, but it really isn't. It's speaking to a deeper thing, because it's speaking to a womb. It's speaking to not just sexuality, it's speaking to the womb, it's speaking to the source of life. And in recognizing the depth of the evilness that it takes for someone to be sexually abusive or to be a sexual molester. In looking at that and seeing the depth of the evilness, now she's beginning to look in the mirror and see I'm better than that. That's not who I was created to be. Why is that happening? Because she is picking up the energy, or the energy from the African female is filling the atmosphere. And now she has a mirror that she is looking in. Now she sees through a glass darkly, meaning that she doesn't see clearly yet. But she's beginning to see who she is. And as she begins to see who she is, she begins to gain her strength. She becomes strong. She begins to experience something that she has never experienced throughout her existence, and that is power, true power. I'm not talking about the power that bought the country. I'm talking about the power that was endowed by the Creator. and it is up to the African woman being awakened to make sure that that power is not abused, neither is must it be allowed to be pushed too far in the other direction. It has to be balanced. And that is one of the reasons you're beginning to see a settling down of the Me Too movement. And what I mean by that is when you look at what Senator Gillibrand did with the guy from Minnesota, what's his name? The senator who had to resign.
Franken.
When she did that, and others began to deal with it, even though the woman said, "I forgive him," she dealt with it as if it had happened yesterday. So it's like men now are on edge about what can I say to a female. Because of that being pushed too far in the other direction, it has to be a balance there. And that balance comes from the awakening of the African womb. And because everything that comes from that African womb is designed to bring balance. Yet, if that woman does not, and I say woman, I'm not talking about an individual, if the manifestation of this African energy, this African source of life, if this manifestation does not awaken and recognize itself as being awakened, then it will not have the power to bring balance to the awakening or to the strengthening of the Caucasian woman. That this power will be abused. Why? Because the only thing that the Caucasian woman has experienced when it comes to power is an abuse of it. She's grown up with an abuse of power. That's all she's ever seen, an abuse of power. And that abuse of power that she has experienced has resulted in the earth being dominated by the Caucasian male and the Caucasian female being subjugated to all of this. And the subjugation of the Caucasian female is far deeper than the subjugation of the African female, because the African female subjugated herself for the benefit of her race, of her people, of her children. What I'm saying is this: even though there were things done to break the African female, to dominate, to close up the womb of Africa, things were done when she was raped in front of her children, when she was forced to have sex with her children, when she was physically abused by the master in the presence of her family, of her people around her, making every attempt to break her. She pretended to be broken, but she wasn't. She silently held on to her strength, and she silently kept life in the people of her that came from her womb. She protected them. An example of that is the story about the lady whose child was sold, and she walked, after working from sun up to sundown, she walked 12 miles one way to the plantation to see her baby, and then walked back 12 miles and got up and went to work every day. And she did this for some time. That's the strength that was hidden. But when the male was broken, it was a different story, because the breaking of the male resulted in the male trying to emulate the master in the way the master treated his female. And the Caucasian male treated its female like chattel property. You stay in the closet until I get ready to have sex with you. And you stay in the closet until my friends come by. Now you're eye candy. You stay in the closet. I don't need you to do anything for me. I need you to do what I tell you to do. You do what I allow you to do and no more. You do what I let you do and no more. Well, that is beginning to shift because of the strength, because of the awakening of the African womb, the African woman, the African femininity is awakening and strengthening everything that's feminine. So the African the African female, which is the manifestation of feminine energy, understands that the power of the Creator was not to be used to colonize or to dominate. It was to be used to bring balance to humanity. And as a result of that understanding, that's what is beginning to take place now. As the male enters the tunnel of self-destruction, the female or the feminine energy is there waiting to put the pieces back together again. Because when we look at Farrakhan made a statement where he said that the only thing that Caucasians have is what we gave them. Everything else they took it. And what we gave them was Europe. Everything else they took it. And I thought about that. And in thinking about that, I thought about the first thing that was taken that had the propensity to pave the way for colonization was gunpowder. Once that was taken, the road to colonization was paved. And as a result of that, look what we have. Now, do I believe for a moment that the Creator did not expect this to happen? If you look at Genesis in a very careful way and study it carefully, you will see that all of it was known, and the change was simply waiting for someone who would be willing to be the bridge in the gap between the two worlds. So what we see is the government and the church, or shall I say the government and religion, which is the source of evil, the source of violence, both of them are coming to the end of their story. And the end of religion and its lie, the end of it was manifested in the death of Billy Graham. Billy Graham was 99. 99 is 18. 81 is 9. He can't get away from those 9s. This is a statement from the Creator, bringing an end to Paulinian religion. When you look at Paulinian religion or Paulinian Christianity, it is not a great leap to go from the domination or the minimizing of the female to racism. That's not a huge leap at all. As a matter of fact, the principles are exactly the same. The only difference is the object of your what? Actions. Can you see that? It's not a leap at all. So it is in my opinion, not so much my opinion, but it's what I see in my soul. Let me say it that way. We are going to begin to experience a tremendous upheaval in Pauline Christianity, and that's not just in the Caucasian settings, but also in the African settings as well, because both of them are the same Christianity. They're no different. You're going to see a virtual end of evangelical Christianity, and the end of it is seen in not only the death of Billy Graham, and you see how they treated him, right? He got presidential treatment
Sure did.
because he was the leader of the free world of religion. And what you see in that is 80% of evangelicals voted for Donald Trump. 80% of evangelicals voted for Donald Trump, and 65% of them still support him with the knowledge of what he has done and is doing. Which tells me that not only is he bringing self-destruction to the system that has colonized the world, but he's also bringing this self-destruction to the tip of the spear that justified that system, which is Paulinian or Catholic Christianity. Any questions about that? Have I been clear so far?
Yeah.
So, the attitude of the African woman has to be one of not self-reliance in that I don't need a man, but self-reliance in being able to look in the mirror and know that you are doing what's in your heart.
So it's really self-awareness first.
Yes, yeah, that's a better word.
Genuinely, honestly knowing who you are and what your role is.
Right, right. Let's say purpose, because role has been used in such a way. And that's important for that to take place. When the African female begins to realize the necessity in being awake and aware, that will begin to cleanse the African male who has been manipulated into being abusive. And what I mean by that is this. I've said this 1,000 times to females. Men only do what you allow them to do. And when you cease to allow them to do it, everything changes, whatever the it is. If you are being abused and you make a decision, you're not going to abuse me anymore, it ends one way or the other. You can walk away from it. Walking away from it doesn't mean you don't love someone, but walking away from it means you love yourself. You can stay in it, or you can eliminate the abuser. But one way or the other, once you become aware of who you are, it changes. It changes. And when it changes, the attitude of males begin to change. And we have been taught by the oppressor that the only thing that matters is the opinion of the male, the thoughts of the male, because the male knows best. Knows what's best.
It all dovetails round into that submissive thing.
That's exactly
You're
what we
supposed
come.
to, yeah.
Yeah, that's the foundation for which we came earlier, the submissive thing. And the problem, not the problem, I'm sorry, the source of the whole submissive thing comes from the church.
Which is the oppressor.
When Paul says, well, submit to your husband, submissiveness is something that it's an action that's should only be afforded to the Creator. That's the only one you submit to. The only one. Because whoever you are submissive to, they are dominant over you. Honestly, from my experience, I have seen the wisdom of feminine energy in that when the female wife, whatever you want to call it, says, I don't think we should do that. and we go ahead and do it, we usually fail. When he says, okay, it usually works out. Why? Because when she says, I don't think we should do that, if she is operating from a foundation of loving care, of loving kindness, all she's doing is expressing who she is, wisdom. And whenever you go against the wise thing or wisdom, you fail. It's just that simple. And then you say, why did God do this to me? No. The Creator gave you an opportunity to avoid this incident, but you chose not to listen. The Creator's not going to come to you and say, Bessie, why are you drinking out of that cup? That's not going to happen like that. He's going to say, Jane, tell that's why you're drinking out of that cup.
Just run through my hand.
The Creator is not going to do that. You know, the wisdom comes from its source. And the source of wisdom is feminine energy, the feminine energy of Africa, of the African female. Now, all of this has been brought to fruition in a very short period of time. This man makes a statement about the S-hole nations, right? And now, all of a sudden, people of African descent are beginning to see themselves as one. Wherein prior to that, it was where the Dominicans are Dominicans and the Haitians are Haitians, and we never been African, they African, that thing, right? But when that happened, and the leaders, some of the leaders in Africa began to speak out and say things, like, you stole our people, and say things like, there are more of us in the diaspora than there are of you, that the place where you are doesn't belong to you, you stole it. When they began saying things like that, when the Africans in this country began saying, we built this, you own nothing. We built all of this, and you are reaping the benefits of it. You stole us, you stole our labor, you stole our inventions, you stole our ingenuity, you stole everything. So in essence, if everything that you stole was taken from you, you would have nothing. When that happened, all of a sudden, we began to see a common thread. But the common thread that we began to see was not the common thread that would bring us together to become the dominators or to have any thoughts of becoming the enslavers. But becoming the dominators to make things right, to bring balance to the whole of humanity, recognizing that even though you enslaved me, you were brought into fruition by the same one that brought me. You were brought to life by the same one who brought me to life. You came out of the same womb that I came out of. You just look different. That's the only difference. And on the heels of that attitude came the movie, The Black Panther. And in that, all of this was seen, all of this was shown. And on the heels of that comes the children of the oppressor saying, it's time to change things. Why? Because that feminine energy has been awakened. And in awakening it begins to strengthen the children of the oppressor, and they shall be led by a child. This is what I'm talking about. This is where we are now. And that will, and that was the beast of the sea and the beast of the land. Both of them must be conquered. The beast of the sea being Pauline Christianity, and the beast of the land being the political systems that bring all this evil and perversion into the earth. Now, I want to
Beast of the land being
political system.
Oh.
I want to look at I want you for just a second the nature of religion it has more to do with the essence of those believers than it does with reconnecting. And I have looked at this because I have taught and I have believed that religion is the thing that was designed to reconnect us to our Creator. Meaning to do again, religion ligaments from the Latin, meaning to connect. I have been wrong in that assessment, and the reason I say that is because we've never been disconnected. So there was nothing to reconnect to. It was something to become aware of. So religion is about bringing you to an awareness of your essence. And the religion that we have been taught has given us an awareness of the essence of the oppressor, as opposed to our own essence, the essence that we were created with. Can you see that? And as a result of that, this is the thing that fascinates me to no end. There are two religions that have been pitted against each other. What are they?
Christianity and Muslim.
In Islam.
Yeah.
The two religions that have been pitted against each other. Muhammad believed that, regardless of the holy book that you believe in, it must be respected. Because Muhammad believed that every nation, every group of people had a prophet through whom the Creator spoke to its people. And the revelation that was given to that prophet was written in their book that's referenced as the Holy Book, and it must be respected. Christianity, from the Paulinian perspective, and Judaism from the Eastern European perspective, does not respect that at all.
The other thing too is that those things written in the Paulinian perspective are not consistent with some of the things in the Quran. So, hi. So, I'm wondering if
Excuse me.
if the Quran speaks to the truth of that book, because there's some things that don't line up with Paul. Yeah, it's the truth of the book.
And honestly, it's not, you don't even have to go to the Quran. You can look at what Jesus said. And it does line up with what Jesus said. And the thing that fascinates me also, and I'm going to get back to the Christianity Islam thing in a moment, but one of the things that fascinates me also is if you, I'll tell you what you do. Listen, go to YouTube and listen to Farrakhan speak. He quotes the Bible more than he does the Quran. He quotes the sayings of Jesus more than he does those of Muhammad.
He quotes the sins of Jesus.
No, the Bible, the scriptures.
Is that the Farrakhan that has changed his mind?
In that trash. Okay, go ahead.
Is that the Farrakhan that has suddenly become a Christian?
No.
Always?
Louis Farrakhan is not a Christian. Louis Farrakhan is a Muslim.
Right. At one time, he did he not
I heard something
not
like
speak
that.
about? Yeah.
But he was switching something. I don't know. Maybe
no.
I got okay.
Ben Chavis calls himself a Christian Muslim. The Reverend Ben Chavis joined the Nation of Islam. I know Ben Chavis personally, and I did a Q&A with Farrakhan when he was Louis X. back in the day. What he did, he began to look differently at his stance on Jews. And the difference is that he began to see more clearly the Jews in Israel or Eastern Europeans who use a religion to manipulate people, period. The point that I'm trying to make is that if you listen to him speak, you will hear that he understands the connection between the Bible better than most pastors I know. The connections that Barbara was talking about in relationship to the sayings of Jesus and the writings of Muhammad is exactly what I'm saying about Farrakhan, that they are connected. Why is it that these two religions are the ones that was pitted against each other?
Because they've been connected from all the way back to Isaac and Ishmael. Oh, no. Isaac and Ishmael? What's up?
Yeah, I get mixed up
That's
too.
okay. Not alone.
But they, I had to do it in my head, so I think I yeah. They have been connected. Why have they been connected? Because, Tristan, can you come on? Because they are one. That's why they've been connected. Because Islam is an extension of what Jesus did and said. And if you read the Quran, you will see that. That Clark,
Tristan, stop.
it is an extension of what Jesus said. And if you read it, you will see, you know, what? Expansion. He expanded on what Jesus taught. And those, some of us have read the Quran recently. And there are those who probably listen to me now who think I'm crazy, but that's okay. You're not the first ones to think that. The reason these two religions were pitted against each other is because it was necessary to divide them in order to conquer the believers. There was never a rift between Christians and Muslims until 1948.
What about the Crusades?
I'm talking about in modern times.
Modern.
Yeah, modern time. When I look at the Crusades, it was not Christianity and Islam. It was Christianity and everything. It was about colonization. The Crusades were about colonization.
Yeah.
So when we look at that, the purpose of that, that division, you have to ask yourself why. The two largest religions on the face of the earth are Christianity and Islam. And if the true nature of Christianity is seen, then what will be seen is that Islam and Christianity are not different at all.
That what is it?
Are not different
Okay.
at all. The languages are just different in that one is Arabic and the other is Aramaic.
So the fundamental truths of both those religions before others, because even now, like you said, there have been misinterpretations even from the Muslim perspective of
Yes.
what the Quran is supposed to be. The fundamental teachings of both of those religions is the same.
Just like the fundamental teachers of Judaism. If you look at the fundamental teachers of Judaism, all of them are the same. The underlying truth of all of humanity, when you look at the indigenous people, are the same.
So then that's what Muhammad meant when he said that the prophets of those other religions, of all religions, are to be revered in a sense because
Yes.
the divine spoke to them.
Right. Somebody read that correctly. Yep. That's what he meant. And until we embrace the true nature of that, we can never be cleansed from the lies that we've been indoctrinated with. And one of the major lies that we have been indoctrinated with is, number one, with Paul's stuff about females being submissive, right? And the lie that says that Muhammad said women not to be submissive. He didn't say it. It's not in the Quran. Those are the two lies. Because if you can force, or if you can get females to buy into submissiveness, you have a submissive people. Kwame Nkrumah said, if you want to know the nature of a nation, look at its females. Because the females are the ones who spend the most time with the children. By virtue of my truth. So, I submit that the demise of what we see as this system is directly connected to the awakening of the African female. The more awakened the African female is, the less time we have to deal with the corrupt system. Because when the African female is awakened, from that womb comes love and kindness. From that womb comes peace and mercy. From that womb comes balance. From that womb comes stability. But if that womb is closed, that system continues to not reproduce itself because it doesn't have a womb, but it continues to protect itself, to strengthen the walls that it hides behind. Nothing is new. And if you read the book Overthrow, you will see that the system functions the same regardless of where it goes. It doesn't change. What happens? The system uses the CIA to do the same thing everywhere. If you wait till the country is close to an election, you go in and you organize secret. You pay people to be subversive. You organize crowds. You put them in the crowd. You create violence in that crowd. And while you're creating violence in that crowd, you begin to use the newspapers in Europe and America to say evil things about the one who you want to lose power. And you organize the people against that, and against that person. And during the period of the quote-unquote election, that person loses. Anyone who does not operate in the interest of this country is overthrown, regardless of whether you're a dictator or whether you have a democratically elected government. It doesn't matter. And if you think I don't know what I'm talking about, look at the history of Iran. Iran had a democratically elected government, and Dulles, who was director of CIA, went into Iran and overthrew that government, overthrew that democratically elected government, and put the Shah in. Did they not? The reason his history doesn't travel outside of the country is because there's a warrant out for his arrest. Because of what they did in Chile, that he was involved in the overthrow in Chile. But he's charged with crimes against humanity. So you don't hear about things like that. So the system is the same. The system can't birth anything. So the womb of life births everything. And one of the reasons I do believe that the womb of Africa has been barren is because it even if it birthed righteousness, it would not have recognized it because it had been so indoctrinated with unrighteousness until it thought that it was righteousness. Right now, we think righteousness is going to church on Sunday, being baptized. Taking communion on the first Sunday. That's not righteousness.
So are we not changing the formula of the system?
No, you don't change the formula of the system. You change the system.
Okay.
See,
I guess that's what I meant.
yeah, you have to change the system. This is the thing. If you destroy the system and you don't have a system to put in its place, then you will recreate the same system because that's all you know.
And it'll be
Seven.
worse. It's like that devil thing.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, it'd be worse.
7.
So that's all you know. So what am I saying to you? That is the reason, regardless of what has taken place, regardless of how we have been treated, regardless of what has been said about us, we cannot retaliate. We cannot do to the system what the system has done to us. Because that's simply a reproduction of the same system.
Gotcha.
And if we are genuinely aware of who we are and what we are about, we would have no desire even to want to do to them what has been done to us.
And that is the reason the awareness of the strength of the African woman or the African energy is taking place. Because we are at a place where the womb of Africa understands it is the source of all life. And by virtue of being the source of all life, it cannot destroy life. Think about it. What I said about Mary McLeod Bethune being in Florida, right?
Mm-hmm.
Think about the woman who went up to pole down the Confederate flag, which is a symbol of our support for slavery.
Say it again. It's a
The
symbol.
Confederate flag is a symbol of white folks' support for slavery. The reason there's such support is because look at what they lost. They lost y'all. You're probably worth about $30,000.
Yeah.
Let me look at you. You about 31.
31.
I'm at the $1 million mark.
I was gonna say
but look at what they lost. Seriously, look at what they lost. And this is a battle cry for revenge. For when we hear talk about make America great again, it's talking about enslave us again.
That's that adage for the South shall rise again.
Yes. So when that female becomes aware of the nature of her being, but now keep in mind that this doesn't work unless the African understands that there is no separation between the African regardless of where the African is. Because if there's separation with the African, there's separation with the woman, there's separation with the life. Think about it. Civilization was spread throughout this world by who? The Moors, right? The Africans, right? When the Moors spread civilization.
This might be a digression. I'm not so sure. So then, when we were talking about Chala's nephew, when he chose to die in the end, if we separate ourselves as if we are separate from Africa, right? That was indicative in the part where his father had him but never took him back and connected him with his people.
You never made him aware of who he was.
Who he was.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's the same thing with Christianity. Christianity keep you in the dark about who you are. And if there's anything in Islam that helps you to see who you are, you stay away from it because that's the devil's religion.
Two questions are going on or something. Two thoughts. So who prophet for the African diaspora?
I am.
Okay, next question.
You know what you
Going to what she was saying about the movie, but in real life, what I experienced between myself and Africans in Africa is there's such a love-hate kind of relationship. And to a certain degree, they don't respect us because we were children of slaves. So what do we do to overcome that divide?
Okay, let me address both of them. I said I am. Let me expound upon that first and then I come to that. When I say I am, the prophet of old, we think that they were well known, right? But they were not. Jesus was not well known. Jesus was only well known in his area. Muhammad was only well known in his area. So the prophet is only well known in a very small geographical location. However, the energy of his words travel throughout the world. That's what I mean. Okay. That is changing as we speak. When Africans from Africa would move into this country, especially in the cities, they didn't stay around us, but now they do. They are moving into communities with people who look like them and understanding and making statements that we have been ignorant because we've allowed ourselves to be divided, separated from you, not realizing the purpose of that separation was to keep all of us in bondage. That's happening as we speak. I think the hardest one to deal with would probably be the Dominicans, because they think they're something special.
Mhm.
Dominicans.
Americans.
Yes.
Why?
They think they're something special. They look at us with disdain. And my response to that is, hey, well, we just a boat stop. The boat just stopped there before it got here. That's the only difference than you and me. You speak Spanish because you were colonized by Spain. But that's the only difference. But there is look how they treat the Haitians. The Dominicans treat the Haitians like dirt.
Like slaves.
Yeah, they do. So that has to end.
Yes.
The only way that can end is for the woman of Africa to wake up and allow the birth of loving kindness to spread throughout humanity. And our anger has not done that. Now that they're not angry with anyone for anything that has been done, now that we are at a place of reconciliation and have a deep desire for balance regardless of who you are and what you've done, and that we are the essence of forgiveness, things change. Now, again, this is coming from the lips of someone who would not march with King because King was nonviolent and I wasn't. You spit on me, you don't walk away. There was nothing nonviolent about me, period. And you ain't gonna slap me. And I'm just gonna fall to the ground. No, that's not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen. I'm gonna shoot your dog. So that's why I didn't march. I couldn't march. None of us could march because you got the group that I was with. We were not nonviolent at all. Now, we were not aggressive all the time, but we were defensive. You know, that's just the way it was. And now, here I am.
Probably peace.
Yes, thank you. I was about to say pacifist. But that's not what I am. The violence that I use now is spiritual. It's totally different. The bottom line is that the dominant attitude that has rendered the womb of Africa barren is the attitude of the Caucasian male. It rendered the womb of Africa barren. It robbed the Caucasian female of any sense of self-awareness. It became a mirror for the male, in that the male tried to emulate it. And now that we are at this place where we realize it's not about male or female dominance, it's all about the unicity of everything that is, recognizing that the source of all life is wisdom itself. And the seed of all life is understanding. And when understanding takes place, it becomes an experience for the whole of humanity, which is knowledge. Does that make sense? So we have to look yet again at the sins of Jesus and the apostles for that matter, in relationship to the sins. Sayings. I can spell a little bit. I used to be in the spelling book. And I said the sayings. The sayings of Jesus, the sayings of Thomas. We have to look at those again. This is the thing. You can't burn all the books. The Catholics proved that. They tried to burn every book of truth, with the only book that they call truth being left are the 66 books in that Bible being translated and interpreted by them. It is said that the book of Barnabas, the one that was translated, was found when they excavated his burial site. It was laying on his chest with his hands on top of it. So whoever buried Barnabas made sure that that book survived. And I believe they did it because they knew that no one was going to exhume their body, not during that period, because it was sacrilegious to do it. And I believe that it was not flesh and blood that gave them that idea. It was the Creator itself who gave them that idea, because the Creator knew that at some point an excavation was going to take place, and that book would be preserved. So here we are with the preservation of truth, and now we have the opportunity to spread this truth that has been preserved, if we choose to, and obviously we have chosen to. One of the major reasons that we meet here is to speak the truth, and so the energy of truth can permeate the earth's atmosphere. What turned the tides in the Civil War to the North? You know what turned the tides in the Civil War? When Robert Smalls took that boat, got the family in Philadelphia, came back and gave it to the Union Army, that's when the Union Army began to turn the tide in the Civil War. Because they had no ships. And Fort Sumter was under siege from the Civil War. But that's what turned the tide. So the connection between South Carolina and Philadelphia is extremely powerful. It's extremely powerful. I don't think it was coincident that Robert Small took him to Philadelphia. He had to take him to the root of this Constitution, of the governing essence of this country, and taking it to the roots. Now we began to uproot the essence of this nation. The first 5 presidents were slaveholders. That has to be, that attitude has to be changed. And it can be changed without the death of the people who hold those attitudes. And all of us are examples of that, because look how much our attitudes and beliefs have changed over the last few years. So if we can change, so can everyone else. Are there any questions? I just think everything is not on the shoulders of the female, but I think everything emanates from the womb of this feminine energy. You understand what I mean by that? Because this is not on the shoulders of the female.
You want to elaborate on that, man?
It's on our shoulders. the ones who see truth carry the weight of the world. It is our responsibility to continue this journey regardless of the obstacles that we must face. It is our responsibility to do everything that is possible, not humanly but spiritually possible, to bring truth and balance to this society. It is incumbent upon us to understand what is meant by the womb of Africa, so that it can be explained in a way that is not racist. Because this is not about race. Race does not exist. There is no such thing as white, black, or yellow, or whatever. That race doesn't exist. Race is a made-up thing to create division between people. Race is a made-up thing to create division between people by the government, and race is a made-up thing perpetuated by the church to justify that separation. Without the complicity of the church, slavery could never have existed. Without the complicity of the church, racism could never have existed. Without the complicity of the church, the domination of females could never have existed. Think about it.
I find it interesting too that they always say the curse of Ham was the curse of Canaan, I guess. And they say it was the color of the skin.
Mhm.
But where does it say that in the Bible?
It doesn't.
It doesn't.
It doesn't say that at all. It doesn't even allude to it.
No. I don't understand how they made that leap.
But we believe the lie that was told.
Well, absolutely. I mean, right now, I have people who are constantly in and out, new people in the upside. And one of the things I have to keep going back to is an understanding of Adam and Eve, that Eve is more of a purpose than it is a name. It's not a name at all. It is an expressed purpose. You are the source of life. Eve, that's what Eve, you are Eve. Your characteristic, your essence is Eve, because you are the source of life. That's not a name. The other thing I have to always deal with is the devil is a lie. The devil ain't gonna put no greedy spirit on me. You know, that kind of thing. I have to deal with that constantly. You got a spirit of nosiness. You know, the spirit of that. Those kinds of things I have to constantly deal with, and that comes as a result of the Caucasian charismatic church. That's where that came from, and now it has permeated the atmosphere in Baptist, Methodist, all the denominational churches now. But it all came from the slave master. The idea of casting out demons, I understand it more than I ever did. It's not, Jesus is talking about mental illness. This was his referencing when it talks about demonic possession. It should never have been translated like that. Never. It's talking about mental illness. He restored the mind. The scripture said that he was clothed and in his right mind. How did we miss that for so many years? Jesus was dealing with mental illness. And all that's being said there is the power to deal with mental illness is in the fluidity of the words that were spoken by Jesus. If the words that you speak are not fluid, then they have no power. The words that are spoken must have a flow between the other world and this world in order for change to take place. The words that are spoken are just like electricity. If you break the wire, the electricity cannot get to the point where it's headed. There is a breakdown in the flow of it. That's how it is with the words that Jesus spoke.
It's like a resonance.
Yeah, absolutely a resonance. Yes, well, that's maybe an easier way to explain it. The vibration of everything is the light that is spoken. Light vibrates constantly, and it is the constant vibration of the light that allows for the things that Jesus said to be done. And we have the same propensity for that to happen with us. And the reason it doesn't is because we are so concrete and finite in how we speak and what we believe. We have boundaries that have been set around what we believe. When we tear those walls down, when the walls of Jericho no longer exist, then the desires of the heart can flow to the place where the desire is met. And the desire of the heart is not for a new car. When there is a desire for a new car, it goes to the car lot. It doesn't go to the other world. And it stops at the car lot. And if you don't have a job, it doesn't go any further. The desire for humanity is what flows between heaven and earth. Enlightenment, the consciousness of enlightenment, and the consciousness of this earth. That's what flows. The desire for the healing of the lepers. The desire to take care of those who are outcasts. That's why Jesus could do what he did. Things like, Father, grant them healing that you may be glorified. That's simple. That's a serious flow. And when we say those, or if we say those words and look for it to happen, then we have put it within a wall of doubt. You have to believe that there is no connection between you and the other world, but you are the other world. You are it and it is you. In order for the flow to take place, show me where the water breaks when it flows. When the river is flowing, if rocks are in the way, they flow over the rocks. There's no break. So regardless of the troubling circumstances that you may face, believe what the scriptures has said about you, about us, about humanity. Believe that, and no matter what the circumstances, no matter what the impediments are, those words will flow over them. Because words actually are the verbalization of actions that have already taken place. If you can wrap your mind around that, then you can make the space for the change that is necessary, not only in your life, but in the life of humanity. If you have a desire for something, and let me use this example, it may be an easier way to explain it. Let's say that you have a desire for another job, right? You can't have the desire for another job and expect it to come to fruition, and you are holding on to this one like it's the only thing that can sustain you. I'm talking about with your heart, not in terms of your organism.
Mm-hmm.
You have to believe that there is something better. By virtue of believing that, you're making space for the change. That's the same thing with prayer meditation. The reason you push everything out is because you have to make space for the energy that you're seeking. So you shut everything down. When I'm studying, most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, when I'm studying, I'm listening to music. I listen to old school music. On the way down, when I'm listening to it, when I feel the urge to listen to it, I know something is about to be spoken to me. Now, you say, well, how can you do that when that music is there? It's there, but it's not. What it does, the music keeps everything else from entering. The music becomes a wall to the earth consciousness, but a conduit to the consciousness of enlightenment. And when what it does, it creates a space for me to receive. And when I'm talking about when I study, my studying, I've been reading this book that Joy sent me, and when I'm reading it, that's studying. But most of my studying is not done with the book. Most of my studying is done simply by being still. That most of my studying is done that way. Can you see that? So I am saying that space must be made in order for change to take place, in order for balance to take place, in order for you to do what is necessary for the centurion girl to live. Does that make sense?
But you're talking basically about the creation principle, that space has to be made for something to be created and to come to fruition.
Absolutely does. And that's how things were created. So create a space within itself in order to bring into being Elohim. And we have to create space in order to bring things into being. And we do it all the time, but we do it for the wrong reason. What we actually do, we create space to bring material things in.
Right.
But we don't create the space for the other world to be infused into us. And one of the best ways to create space, I have found for me anyway, is to lose all of your affinity for anything material. To get beyond your desires for material things, to get beyond your desire for notoriety, and be willing to give up whatever it takes in order for you to be what you were created to be. That's important. If you cannot do that, if you are not at a place where you are willing to walk away from everything, inclusive of family ties, it doesn't matter. Whatever it takes to be what you were created to be, that willingness, that desire creates a space that's necessary for you to become aware of it and for you to function in that on that principle. That's just the truth of the matter. The other thing is it would have been impossible for Jesus to do what Jesus did if Jesus had the same relationship with females that the priest had. He could never have done what he did if he had the same relationship with females that the other rabbis had. He could never have done what he did. And the reason he could never have done what he did is because he needed a womb to birth the principles that he was teaching. And the principle that he was teaching, the womb has the power to bring to birth them, but not only to birth them, but to bring them to fruition. And it was in the womb of those apostles that the seeds of his principles were planted, so that when they were confronted with this overwhelming desire to leave the upper room and do what they knew they were supposed to do, that all of these things would be brought back to their remembrance. Now, when I look at the idea of remembrance, I see, community based upon do this often as you may remember to me, right? And when I look at that, first of all, it's a spiritual thing. Second, what you are actually saying when you do communion every first Sunday is that you forget him for the rest of the month. I forget you for 29 days. In the case of February, I'll forget you for 27 days. And then on that 28th day, I'm going to remember you. That's ridiculous to me. How many times can you say that you have been unaware of the religion that you were reared in? Because we're always constantly reminded of it. So while we have to communion. The other thing is that, why are you Baptist? Why are you Methodist? God didn't make you that. You're Baptist because your folk were Baptist. Mom and Daddy were Baptist. That's why you're Baptist. And that's the reason you're Methodist. Which in itself creates separation. And it also creates an indoctrination into a system that is foreign to the scriptures. Because there are no indications of any separation, be it whether you read Jesus or Muhammad. There are no indication of separations based upon denominational beliefs. As a matter of fact, Jesus said when they write all these doctrines, they put weights on you that they themselves won't carry. That's what Jesus said. And we see it to be the truth, because quite frankly, if we look at the doctrines that we have been given from birth, we began to see that not only us, but we really don't know anyone who abide by all of them. I mean, how many of you have ever drank in your life? Drink. Yeah, drink alcohol. Yeah. So that in itself says that you have violated the doctrine, because you won't refrain from, right?
What doctrine?
Baptist.
Oh,
People
Baptist doctrine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Oh.
it's on the wall.
I mean, so you see where I'm coming from?
I would do it every Sunday.
There are
Did that.
no doctrine. Me too, that's why I had to take it now. There are no doctrines that everyone is abided by.
Lord have
The
mercy.
basic is, what is the basic? Love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, thy soul, and thy mind. Love thy neighbor as thyself.
That's right, that's the basic.
That's basic. That's it. If you love your neighbor as yourself, and you understand your neighbor is not necessarily the person who lives next door to you. Your neighbor is anyone you come in contact with. And if you understand that you have a neighborhood inside of you, then you begin to understand that you are your neighbor is you. What?
Nothing. I was just thinking, so that has nothing to do with whether or not you have a glass of wine or a margarita or whatever.
Or a shot of bourbon.
Nothing.
Nothing at all. Best
That's
in
my
God.
vodka.
But that's, so what I'm saying, if we are still holding on to those things, if we have not cleared those things from who we are, there is no clear channel for the fluidity of the words that Jesus spoke.
I think your people have.
Right? And this is not, if you have it, it's not for you. Because y'all, I had to hide mine for y'all. So this is for humanity. You have to clear yourself of all of these things in order for that to flow. You also have to be clear of all this thing of fear of failure. You have to be clear of whether or not I made the right decision. You know, I almost said something else, but you know in your heart whether or not you should do something or not. You know that. You feel it. You know whether it's here or here, whether it's in the pit of your stomach or whether it's in your head. You know that, don't you?
Yes.
Every one of us don't. All of them know that. So why is it that it is easier, it's easier for us to embrace what we want in that regard and struggle with things that's put upon us? That letting go.
So if I have a desire to get a new job, but like you said, I know within, because I want more money. I'm just being honest with you. So I know that I can't go anywhere. So you're telling me that I should just
Be still.
be still and know.
Yes. Let me tell you something. I shared this with you when I went to the First Church, Mount Tabor. I knew that I had to leave the job I had, even though I could work it and do it. They were paying me $100 a week. I have never in my life, since I was 15 years old, made that small amount of money. 14 actually. And everything was taken care of. Don't know how, but it was. I decided I was going to get a job because I wasn't making enough money. I wanted more money. And when I got the job, all my bills got behind, including my house payment.
Dang.
When I left the job, I left that job in April of that year. And in June of that year, one of the members asked for a meeting, a church meeting. I gave it to them. And the only thing on the agenda was to give me a $150 increase in salary. Now, what happened is I was fine as long as I was trusting that $100 a week. No. As long as I was trusting the one who pulled me from that job.
Okay.
But when I decided I wanted more money, not needed,
I see the difference.
but wanted more money, everything got behind. Everything became a struggle. When I responded to that, go sit down, please. You want to sit right here? Okay. When I responded to that, what happened? The increase came because the trust was restored.
Okay.
Trust where you are and trust who you are. Lessons must be learned in every aspect of our lives. Lessons must be learned. And as one of my brothers said, you got to pay for your learning. And sometimes it's not easy. Okay?
Okay.
Now, when that trust is there or restored, that's when the flow, everything flows free. You have to know what it feels like not to have in order to appreciate when you do. And when you do, you have to hold on to not having so you can feel or have empathy with those who need what you have.
So you
Not want it,
right.
but need what you have so you can pass it on.
So you're saying don't chase the dollar, let it come to me.
Yeah. Dollars always chase you if you don't chase them. Dollars just like a man. No, I'm being funny.
I know you are. I know you are.
But that
I got you.
everything. See, when when you understand that material things are not the things that you should seek, then they begin to seek you. And when they seek you, they often catch up with you. But there are some material things that seek you that you have to refrain from taking or accepting. And I say that in regards to the number of churches I've been offered and the offer I had to go on TV in. Those things I backed away from. Because in my head, I heard what they were saying. In my heart, I knew it wasn't right.
Right.
In my head, being a millionaire would make things a lot easier for the family, the people, and all those things came into my head. But in my heart, it didn't feel right.
Right.
So I had to walk away from it. And I don't believe that you have to be a millionaire to be comfortable. I don't believe that. I believe if you are supposed to support the comfort of others.
The example you just gave, if you had succumbed to your head as opposed to what you knew in your heart, that is a form of mental illness that you were just talking about?
It is a form that's not recognized by us, but the form I was talking about is the evident form, where people are out of their mind for real.
Okay,
Yeah.
but
Now,
out of your mind for real doesn't necessarily, we tend to think like the shootings and things like that. But out of your mind could also be individuals like Trump or the Pope who manipulate others. Is that not a mental illness?
yeah, but it's a different way.
Okay, all right.
That's a sign, Claude.
I believe that I believe that I knew you were going. When we talk about mental illness, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know how we talk about in our DNA, the reason probably we're afraid of water because we were thrown overboard,
Right.
and the reason that we don't deal with stock market or are apprehensive about it is because we were traded on the stock market. These things are in our DNA.
Mhm.
Mass shootings is in their DNA.
From the conquering
Caucasians
of
they had no issue with killing a large number of people.
Oh,
Look at
yeah.
the Native Americans.
Yeah.
They will wipe out a village.
from the conquering of gunpowder.
Andrew Jackson, the little bastard, put smallpox in the blankets that the babies had to be wrapped up in.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, look at, they had no issue with killing large numbers of people. That's in their DNA.
Mm.
Now, what happened? This kid yesterday, he mentally ill. Nobody said he was mentally ill. He shot his parents on campus in Michigan, at Central University of Michigan.
Mm.
Now, when African kid walked into a classroom, shot a teacher, and left. How many of us shoot up a whole number? This killed massive people. It's not in the DNA.
Mm.
So no one wants to talk about that aspect of it. No one wants to talk about the way that Native Americans were slaughtered. Now, we were not slaughtered like that in this country in the beginning because we were property.
Yeah.
But they didn't have any problems with killing people in Tulsa. When they destroyed like Wall Street.
After Reconstruction.
After Reconstruction, they had no issues with doing that. They had no issues with not only killing people after Reconstruction, but they had no issues with putting people back on the plantations. So I have said this many times in private, but never in public. Go outside and say that. Come on.
I'm gonna get some more toys.
Okay, no. Stay here or go over there. Stay here or go over there. What you gonna do?
Go get some more toys.
No.
You play.
So I've said this in go with your mom right now. Go. One.
You are my baby.
So I've said it in private, I've never said it publicly before,
Mm-hmm.
that that's in their DNA. Mass killers. It's just that simple. Why is it that you are in love with a weapon of mass destruction? Why is it that you're in love with a weapon of mass destruction? Why is it that you embrace an AR-15 just like it's your girlfriend? 90% of the weapons in the world that's held by private people are in America. 90% of the weapons in the world are held by America. Why is that necessary?
Because I need something materialistic to protect my
After-
materialistic stuff.
After the Emancipation Proclamation, gun control was for black folks. That's what gun control was for. But the possession of a gun was for white males to protect themselves against the ones who were enslaved or had been enslaved, or to execute them, whichever one they chose to do. And to this day, you will find that the overwhelming majority of the weapons that's held by Caucasians or Caucasian males who live in slave states. The most lax gun laws on the books are in slave states. The ones who are looking for reciprocity between the states when they come to concealed carry are the representatives from slave states. Reciprocity for concealed carry means that every state must recognize every state's law to carry a concealed weapon. Who are they talking about? And the last thing I want to say about the gun issue is this. What do you think would happen if there had been African Americans on those bridges and behind those rocks in Oregon pointing them at U.S. Marshals?
The massacre.
When they pointed, and it's against the law to point a weapon at a federal agent, and nothing happened. Everyone, they would have dropped bombs on their bridges.
Yeah.
So the thing is, this is the reason I should say that we cannot think for a moment or entertain the thought for a moment that the Creator intends for us to overthrow the chains of bondage with weapons that are created by men. Because the weapons of our warfare are not carnal. Our weapons are in our soul. The depth of our soul, the weapon the greatest weapon in our soul is that of forgiveness. When you forgive, restoration takes place. And there is no loving kindness if there is no forgiveness. So forgiveness must take place in order for loving kindness to come from that place of forgiveness. Vengeance must be left in the hands of the Creator. We have no right to seek vengeance. We really don't. Aggressive behavior is an affront to the Creator. We cannot be aggressive in warfare. Even Muhammad taught that. You cannot be aggressive, but you can defend yourself. But not just yourself, but the people who are under your protection. So
how do we deal with, like, the violence, like in Chicago and Baltimore? I mean that in the black community.
The reason there is so much violence in those areas in a physical sense is because there's no hope in terms of jobs and decent living conditions. And that's done by design. How do we deal with it? We deal with it by the awakening of the womb of Africa. Because out of it comes life. And when the sense of life, or when loving kindness and peace comes from that womb, it begins to take effect in the hearts of men. We're not going to end it by imprisoning people. We're not going to end it by shooting people. It has to end by changing hearts. And it is being proven in the streets of Baltimore, where there are a group of people in Baltimore who were in the gangs, and what they do when there is a altercation, they step in and they take them to the peace table, and they talk it out, and shootings and killings are down substantially. As a matter of fact, in one area, I'm thinking it's either New York or Baltimore, where one of the areas where this program was instituted, they have had 0 shooters in 3 years. It's in New York. One of the communities in New York. 0 in 3 years. Because they're speaking to the heart as opposed to incarcerating. So when you speak to the heart, you help people to understand that your hope is not in your job. Your hope is in self-respect. Your hope is in you. Go to your mom. Go to your mom. Oh, trash can. Okay. Self-respect is where your where your hope comes from. If you have, look at an abusive relationship. When you get to the place where you recognize that I don't have to take this abuse, I'm better than this, what happens?
Things change.
Things change.
Yes.
Now you have hope for a better life. And there have been people who walk out of those kinds of relationships with 0 money in their pockets, with no idea as to how they were going to make it. But they walked away from that relationship, not just alone, some of them walked away with children. And because of that hope, because of them believing that there's somebody greater than me who has my back, they made it. It did not emanate in the mind of a man to establish safe houses. That came from the heart that was touched by the Creator. Because so many people needed a place to be where they could feel safe and start all over again. These programmatic things, every philanthropic program that has come from this government in this country came from those who were enslaved. The concept. Health, education, welfare. Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman. I mean, and when you look at the philanthropic programs that came into effect, they came from the hearts of the enslaved. So that's what I'm talking about. That's how those things change. They change because there is a desire for them to be different. But it has to be genuine. And it has to be unimpeded by doubt and by desire for notoriety or anything else. You have to do it simply because it's right. That's it. Do things simply because it's right. And the right thing to do is not necessarily what we have been taught. Sometimes the right thing to do is outside those lines. Any questions? No questions, no comments? I'm done. Okay, telephone people? No questions, no comments?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Talk to you later. Have a great day. Ray, you have a great
All right.
morning.
Thank you. Bye.